Recording. Puppy, where'd my grandmama?
Okay, how about now? Can you hear me now? All
Yes.
right. Donna's shaking her head. Donna, nice to finally meet you in person or virtually.
You as well.
Put a name with a face. All right, so we've got a few folks that are still filtering in here, so we might give it another minute or two, but otherwise we will try, as always, to start as close to time as possible. I think the conversation today, we've been keeping them this week to about an hour. I want to be very respectful of your time. I know that you've got an awful lot going on, and I really appreciate you making some time to visit with us today. So this is the KHSA education section. And I know that many of you have participated with or been familiar with the committees that KHSA has had in the past, and you might have participated with them. When I first came on board, I visited with several of those committees, actually went to some of their meetings and found that while there were really good things happening in terms of networking and sort of sharing information, the committees really needed some goals. They really needed a work plan to really be driving towards certain things, because I think having a conversation is good, but oftentimes they can turn into just a gripe session about, things aren't working well for me, or, what can we do? So I really would like the structure of these conversations to be ones in which we're really focused on some issues and topics that are very relevant to everyone. We recognize that education is a huge space within Head Start and Early Head Start. And so we may not be able to focus on everything all the time, but we do want to make sure that we're providing an opportunity for all issues to be shared, for people to be seeking help, providing assistance, and then driving towards some of those goals. So with that, let me introduce, we've got James Peters with us. James is the chair of this particular group, and we also have Donna Taylor. She is the vice chair of this particular group. So these are your two member leaders that are sort of overseeing and guiding the efforts of the education section. So let me turn it over to James and see if he and Donna have anything they want to share, and otherwise we'll just get started. Oh, you're on mute.
There we go. Hi, everyone. I just want to thank everybody. I know it's Friday and I'm sure everybody's crazy busy. I just want to thank everybody for taking their time out just to log on. Like John said, I know education is a big component of Head Start, and that we probably won't even get to touch a lot of the things that I'm sure we want to get to touch on, but I'm excited to start these back up. I know when we got to do these years ago, they probably didn't get to go as planned. So I know the goal is for us to really do these as kind of like a resource to all of us who are leaders in the education component in our Head Start grantees, and kind of like as networking as well. So that's all I really wanted to say to start out. So
Donna, is there anything you'd like to share?
Not at this time, just nice to see everybody. And I'd like to echo what James said. I'm glad we are having this meeting and looking forward to the work. So.
All right. So having said all of that, let me, you should have received a copy of an email this morning that I sent that had a couple of links in it, but I'm going to go ahead and paste it here as well. This will allow you to access the materials that we'll be discussing today. And so this first meeting really is about getting to know one another, getting to know the structure of the section, sort of what we're going to be doing and driving towards. The second part of it, and probably the most significant, is for us to discuss education issues in the Head Start and Early Head Start worlds as they're relating to, one, those top issues that are facing children and families. The second is, what are the top challenges facing programs and staff? And then the third question is sort of that pie in the sky, wave your magic wand. If you could fix anything in education for Head Start or Early Head Start, what would it be if you weren't limited by money, staff, or time? So those were sort of the three questions, and we presented those via a survey, and I know several of you participated with that. But before we get to that, why don't we go around the room and have everybody introduce themselves? And you will note that in that folder that I just posted in the chat is a copy of the roster. So you'll be able to pull up the roster of everyone that has been appointed or has signed up for this particular group so far. And it's a pretty good group so far. We have heard from 17 of the 28 grantees. They have made appointments, 17 of 28. So we're continuing to get those other 11 to get their names in and get people participating. But I think you'll find that roster is useful because not only does it have the names and the contact information, but most importantly, it tells you what they do and who they're with. Because sort of an unintended consequence or a benefit of these activities is that it's allowing us to sort of rebuild that directory so that you can be in touch with your colleagues around the state. You sort of know who to talk to. And hopefully, as we continue these conversations, our goal next year, obviously, is for them to begin to be in person sometimes. But as we continue these conversations, we'll have more and more folks involved. And if you see that there is a need for us to bring other organizations in, we may find that we want to invite them to the table and just have them be a part of those conversations. For instance, yesterday we talked to the data and technology section, and they want to make sure that they have the folks from KY Stats that are participating, so that as they're thinking about data, they're not only accessing the stuff that we have as Head Starts, but they're also accessing everything else that's out there. So you can make real world comparisons. So with that, sorry, that was a long explanation. So why don't we start? I'm just going to go around my screen. And so I'm going to call on Shelly to introduce herself. Tell us who you are, what you do, who you're with, and how long have you been with Head Start?
My name is Shelly Jeffries. I'm with the Breckinridge County Head Start Preschool. I have been in education for 24 years. I was a Head Start preschool assistant for many years, went back to school, became a preschool teacher, left that a few years ago, taught kindergarten, and now I am the instructional coach for our Head Start preschool program.
Great. Donna.
Donna Hendricks. I am the early education Head Start manager. I have been with Head Start going on 10 years. I started off as an instructional assistant. I completed my degree, became a teacher, then an area coordinator with Head Start, and now I'm the education manager for early.
Very good. Let's go to James. Do you want to mention anything about yourself?
So like John said, my name is James Peters. I am the education coordinator here for the Northern Kentucky region for Head Start. I have been with Head Start. This is my 12th year. I started all the way from the very bottom. I started off as a floater, and I've done every position from floater, assistant teacher, teacher, site manager. Basically, I've done everything, and then now I'm in the position I am. So yeah, so this is my 12th year, and I don't I'm going anywhere anytime soon, hopefully. So yeah, that's me.
All right. Christy Jenkins.
I'm Christy Jenkins. I have been with Head Start for 22 years. I'm like James. I started at the very bottom as a parent. I've done teacher assistants, bus driver, teacher, mentor coach, FSA, and now I'm education manager for our Head Start program here at Gateway Head Start.
Thank you. Donna Taylor.
Hi, I am the education manager for the Ohio Valley Educational Cooperative over Head Start and Early Head Start. I have been with Head Start for 5 years, and previously I was a preschool teacher, and I've been an instructional coach. So it's nice to meet you all.
Gwen.
Morning. My history is just like everyone else. It started out as a parent volunteer. The teacher there was like, the only way you're going to be able to stay in my classroom, Gwen, is if you get your CDA. So I kind of got bamboozled a little bit. So I got the CDA, and just from that, I fell in love with Head Start. I've been there for 21 years. Volunteer, teacher, early teacher, then teacher assistant, then lead teacher. Done that for 14 years. And then the last 7 years, I've been in central office as part of administration. I am the transportation specialist. But my love and the thing that I enjoy most is being an instructional coach, working with our staff.
Melissa.
I have been with Lklp Head Start for 23 years. I first started out as associate teacher and then the lead for the last 12 of the 20. And then I moved to central office, and this is my 3rd year there as an instructional coach.
Okay, Carrie.
Morning, you guys. I am with Community Action of Southern Kentucky. I've been with the agency 16 years, same story as everybody else, a little bit of everything. Moved over to central office about 6 years ago as mentor coach, then pulled into early education manager, and that job kind of dissolved. And so I moved into full education manager. But this week, I've been back in the classroom teaching, had my brand new hairnet broke out as the cook because we had some folks quarantining. And I think next week I might be in a different building doing the same kind of stuff. Jack of all trades.
Okay, Anita.
I am the Child Development Specialist for the Early Head Start at Lklp, and I've been there for about 19 years, and I'm just like everybody else. I did a little bit of everything from the cook to riding the bus to just everything that needs to be done, but I love it.
Charlotte.
Good morning. I'm Charlotte Richards, and I'm with Murray Head Start. I started with Head Start back in '94 when we started early, and then I've done a lot of different things over the years, and currently I am the school readiness coordinator for our program.
And then finally on the call with us, we have Jeff Martin. Jeff is actually KHSA's Vice President for Engagement, and that means that he is actually overseeing all of these different sections. And so he's got a keen interest in each of them and has been participating with many of them, but I know the education one is probably near and dear to your heart, Jeff.
Now, this is, I think, my 38th year in education. I actually spent 33 years with the school system as a teacher and an elementary school principal. I finished up as a preschool coordinator. And so when I retired and my wife said, even though I'm not at home, you're still driving me crazy, go find something. I had the association with Audubon, so I went back as local area manager. And then about close to 2 years ago, I got the director's position. So maybe a little bit bigger job for a retirement job than I was looking for, but I fell in love with preschool, as several of you have said, when I got really associated. I had it in my building as a principal. But when I become preschool coordinator, I just absolutely fell in love with it and understood the importance before, but totally got a different perspective when I dove into it. So it gets in your blood, and I love hearing everybody say it because I understand what you're saying.
All right, very good. So everyone, thank you again for joining this morning. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen real fast because, well, we don't want to talk about Zoom. Let me find it here. There we go. So this is actually our Google Drive folder for this particular group. And so can everybody see that? Yeah, okay. So here's what I'd like us to accomplish today if we can. We've talked a little bit about sort of the section, our mission and objectives. It's going to be a little bit different for each section. On the one hand, we do have a little bit of a cookie cutter approach in their establishment, sort of in getting them up and going. But I think that's where a lot of the similarities will end, because I think each one of our sections is going to be tackling different issues and maybe doing so in different ways. We have heard from 4 sections already this week. We'll hear from our final one next week. There is a lot of similarities in some of the issues, and I think that is just a function of sort of where we find ourselves right now in the middle of a pandemic, with things changing rapidly, if not by the week, by the day. And so there are a few similarities, and I plan to sort of go over some of the things that they have identified. But our main thing today is to really sort of come out of here with 2 to 3 goals or projects. And we may come up with a list of 5 or 6, and that's okay. because what I'm going to do at the end is I'm going to put it all together, send it back out to you. And if we need to make some choices that way, we can. I think these groups right now are scheduled. I'd like to schedule them to meet 4 or 5 times a year. If we find that the group needs to meet more often, we can certainly do so. If we find that small subsets of the membership of this group want to meet, we can certainly do so. So we want to be flexible and responsive to your needs. Okay, so having said all of that, the survey that we had sent out, and I mentioned this at the outset, the survey we sent out, if I can move this around, asked a few questions, and this was the first one. The first one was thinking about Head Start education. What, in your opinion, are the top 3 issues facing children and families? And so you see there that folks have identified a range of topics. So I don't want to read all of them. Everybody's got a copy of this, or you can sort of see it on there, but we do see some themes. And some of those themes obviously are COVID. That is popping up everywhere. We see some themes around recruitment and retention of staff. We see themes around parental involvement and the time that parents can really spend. Our health and nutrition group spent a lot of time talking about nutrition. There were a lot of health-related issues, but there's also a lot of health-related training that's already out there, and maybe not as much nutrition-related stuff. So I think you'll see that group focusing on nutrition in the sense that you see that identified there as a topic. Lack of resources in some rural areas. We talked about that a lot in our data and technology group when we were discussing access to broadband internet and the ability to really get information and resources out to families in some of those more rural areas. So you see some of the issues that are here, and obviously everyone is familiar with those. So these are the things that people have identified in terms of the issues facing children and families. Okay, now here's the listing of the challenges facing staff. Thinking about Head Start education, what in your opinion are the top 3 challenges facing staff? We see stress due to family challenges and changes, stress of limited employees. We hear that an awful lot, and we heard that in the introductions this morning. People having to wear multiple hats and cover different things. And one of the things that is beginning to be recognized an awful lot is the burnout and the strain that that's putting not just on your frontline staff, but it's working its way up throughout the organization. People that traditionally may not be in the classroom now are because they're trying to cover things. Keeping staff motivated, keeping staff trained, focused on the mental health of staff. You see here a misunderstanding of their job, so perhaps a training related issue. Financial hardships facing families, low pay. Certainly when we look across Head Start and we sort of compare that to some other educational outlets in the communities, the pay is often a big differential there. And so trying to figure out how does that happen? I know at the federal level, you've got a bill or two that, in the, what's the word I'm thinking of? Can't think of it. There's the particular bill right now that actually has pay increases for Head Start, but we'll see how that moves, and if it moves, hopefully it will, and that will benefit folks. But you see the issues that are really facing staff here. And they actually fit well, a conversation that I had with James as we were rolling up to this, one of his big issues was recruitment and retention. It was all about sort of staffing issues. It was about how do we provide more training? How do we make sure that we're getting people, class certified and people understanding all the different responsibilities? And then finally, the 4th question was, if you could wave a magic wand and fix anything regardless of time, staffing, or cost, what would it be? So this is sort of the wish list: trained and available staff, increase the number of educated staff in our classrooms, pay staff a reasonable wage, hire mental health specialists, free spending and large surplus of employees. That'd be nice, wouldn't it? To have rooms set up with lots of sensory toys, things for kids, and deal with challenging behaviors. So for instance, in our disabilities and mental health group yesterday, challenging behaviors and behavioral training was really at the top of the list of things that they'd like to pursue. And then again, conscious discipline, that was another one that we want to pursue in the disabilities and mental health groups. So that sort of gives you a little bit of a flavor of some of the things that are out there right now. So let me just quickly share a couple of the things that some of these other groups had done. So in our family services group, one of the big issues they had was the impending vaccine mandate and the impact that's going to have on staff retention. Not sure that there's an awful lot that we can do about that. Jeff was able to share with me earlier this week that when he was at the Region 4 meeting, they heard from OHS and they may have exemptions for some folks, but they're going to be incredibly narrow and sometimes difficult to meet. So what we have heard so far about the vaccine mandates is that they are sticking to it. Staffing and pay, professional development, disabilities and mental health, staffing shortages, technology challenges, mental health and burnout. So all the issues continue to sort of be a little bit similar, but they're sort of focused on it, how it affects their areas. So with all of that, that's a lot of information that I've sort of thrown at you. I'd sort of like just to open it up and begin a conversation, particularly around the challenges facing families and children and sort of the challenges facing staff. What are the things that you think are those top issues that we could really focus on? And when I say focus on, things that we can work on and actually make a difference with. There may be some things that we just can't make a difference on in terms of what this working group can do. We can raise visibility, we can call attention, but can we really get in and make some adjustments and changes? So thinking about all that, I'll just sort of open it up. So please don't be bashful.
So I am totally okay to jump in first. So we've talked recently, the big thing is our focus is children and families for sure. But what we realized at a higher level is if our staff are not okay, then we don't create environments where we can take care of our children and families. We don't want staff in the classrooms that are so burnt out and so overwhelmed that they become actually part of the problem area. That you know what I mean? We want to be the difference between home and that's one of our biggest concerns right now. And so we're shuffling staff and maybe making some hybrid decisions to do some Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday classes versus 4 days a week so that we can further staff the rooms and maybe help reduce that. And the big concern right now is how does that look with full enrollment? Because you need staff to be there before you can get enrollment, right? You can enroll kids all day long, but if you don't have staff, then you can't get anywhere. And that's probably one of my biggest concerns right now is what is full enrollment going to look like in January? Is that going to be addressed and aware that as we lose staff and as staffing shortages are already there, how are we going to approach that? That's just my mind concern this morning.
John, would you like for me to say what was addressed at Region 4 on that?
Sure, absolutely.
I was at Region 4 a couple weeks ago, and Tommy Sheridan from NHSA, and I think you probably have seen a letter where they sent to OHS. They said that Offset Start understands that we got staffing shortages. They understand we've got parents that are afraid to put their children in the centers. They have not said that they're going to back off from the full enrollment, but there's hints that they could. Maria Goss had told them at Region 4 a few days before this that, she didn't know of any plans for it, but did reference the fact that they had dropped class and all that. So she said, just stay tuned. So nothing definitive at all, but just understand it is bouncing around up there, that every single program's having issues. As I talked to multiple directors there in Tampa, the one topic more so than vaccines was we're drastically under enrolled. After talking to them, I felt much better. I'm kind of panicking about our enrollment, as I bet everybody on here is. But after talking to people across the entire region, I actually felt better because some of them were 50% and less. And I thought, well, I'm better off than what I thought maybe. But it was the hot topic among every director, but nobody's saying they're going to back off from it. I'm just saying it is bouncing around.
John,
Go ahead.
I'm sorry, does KHSA plan to send a letter to OHS regarding the letter that was sent from NHSA? I know that on that email, I saw that they were calling for different states to send letters.
Right. Yeah. I don't know. We haven't done it yet, but it's one of those things that it'll probably go either today or Monday, because I know a lot of the other state associations have done that very same thing. And so, yeah, so we will send it to our delegation. Actually, I want to copy our congressional delegation on it as we send it to OHS too. So, yep, good point.
One thing I was going to say is, we are struggling getting certified and classified staff. I've been in a classroom all week, and I guess we have a lot of new staff, new teachers, so they're all gung ho and they're ready to go, and they're giving it everything they have. But what I have noticed in our district, like some of the teachers, they've been there for, a long time. And I think what we're seeing a lot of is more abuse. I think our families are struggling to either stay in a job or scared of the virus, whatever. And so, it's burning our teachers out because they're just worrying day and night about the living conditions, and not necessarily physical abuse. Like they don't have food. There's so many things that, we sometimes take for granted because we have. And we actually, I know in our area, we have some very poor people that are really struggling through this. And, it does weigh on everybody's, conscience. And then when you have short staff, I think it's just a combination of all of it. And I think that's where the stress and the burnout is, really starting to happen. And it's just hard for people right now, everybody.
Yeah, I think that it's been, and I don't want to say it's been so bad, but every member of our leadership has been assigned one of our locations. So just like with everybody, I haven't taught since 2014. So, but I've never thrown away any of my teaching stuff. So, but it's almost come to that point where I don't know if public schools has gotten like a lot of funding this year, but we've seen a big influx of our teachers because we're not a blended program or anything like that. We're licensed through the DRCC. Our Head Start grantee is. So we've noticed a lot of our staff have left throughout the school year and gone to public schools. And a lot of our lead teachers that might have their degrees in IEC and have chosen to go on through the non-certification track have left, who are considered the lead teachers, and gone and stepped down to be paras and vice versa. And that's what we've noticed a lot of. And so being a Head Start teacher is very stressful. There's a lot, but it's not going to be any less stress going into a public preschool. And I think what we've noticed is, and John, I'm glad that you said like what some other committees are focusing on. And I think because we've done surveys ourselves with some of our staff, and just some of the behaviors that we've seen over the last few years have just been so severe. You're not just seeing like some like cussing and things like that and just some spitting and things like no, it's been some severe cases where even a licensed mental health therapist has had to write a referral where a child has had to been sent to a mental health hospital because a 3 or a 4-year-old has been that severe with special needs. Like we haven't seen these behaviors before. And even an IEC certified teacher is not trained to deal with those type of behaviors. And so teachers are starting to be like, well, I'm not going to make $17 an hour, where I can go to work retail, or I can go do something else, making that same amount with less stress. So that's why we're seeing like this year has been one of the worst years. And of course, COVID isn't helping any with the stress of that. And so we've heard with exit interviews where like last year, and I'm exaggerating, but there was 3 people who had COVID in the state. And there were so many of these guidelines with the governor, with the Office of Head Start, all of these guidelines came out. And so we followed them. And then this year, it's even worse now, like deaths are quadrupled. And it's like there's crickets, there's no guidelines, there's no recommendations, there's nothing. So basically our teachers feel like they're just left out to fend for themselves, which us as a program has made our own recommendations. And we've kind of followed the same things as last year, which at the start of the school year, we kind of felt the same way, like the Division of Child Care didn't come out with any recommendations. The state didn't come out with any recommendations. The Office of Head Start really didn't. So it was kind of like we were at a free for all. Like we were like, well, cases are even higher than last year. Like, yes, there was, and we felt like, and the teachers felt like the only answers they were given is, well, get the vaccine. Well, even people who got the vaccine are still getting COVID. So that's where the point was with, I'm sorry, I don't even know what I was talking about, but that's just where everybody's at, I feel like, with everything. So, and I think a big point is in regards to staffing is, and I know one of the things on the thing was like with boosting morale and things like that. So I'm just kind of curious with the rest of the people on here in regards to like, I know with the lack of staff and things like that is, I know a big part, because when we surveyed our staff is that they're starting to feel like the lack of morale and the lack of connection now, because everybody's stretched so thin. I'm just curious, like, how are you guys still like trying to keep like morale up? And are you guys doing anything like above and beyond or anything like that to still keep like the pep up so nobody else leaves or anything like that? Because by all means, I'm making sure that nobody else goes anywhere.
So if you don't care, I'll speak on what we're doing, what we're trying to do, because that is a constant discussion in our management meetings, is morale for staff. Just yesterday, I just want to say this real quick. Yesterday, I was observing one of our better teachers, and she was just going through the motions. You all have seen that, and the burnout. And I just, at the end, we're just kind of having that little exiting conversation about my observation. And I'm just telling her, I'm like, you want to tell me, what's going on today? Because I could see. And she was just like, I'm just going to be honest. She says, I feel like a robot. She said, I feel like a robot that is working in this classroom. She said, I can't make any connections with my children because this week we're on quarantine. Next week we're not. She said the families are getting aggravated and they don't want to participate with, the program at all. And it was really obvious on her with the burnout. So I'm just trying to, tell her how, the program is so pleased that she's pulling through and she's being a trooper. And she's one of our, degreed, which is required in Leslie County. She has to be there, which all of our staff are important. But especially these teachers who can very easily just throw their hands up with us, try to give them a little extra support with, not leaving, because it's hard to replace those degrees. Mm-hmm. But what I wanted to say on to follow up with what you were saying, James, is we are kind of changing on our onboarding. I don't know how everyone else does it with new staff, but we bring our new staff in to the central office for weeks, like 2 weeks, and each one of us there, the specialists, and we work with them on our components and try to get them prepared for what they're going to be doing when they go in. But even with that, what's been happening is they get in there, and because of what you were also saying with the behaviors, no matter how much we are doing, they get in there and the reality sets in and it smacks them in the face. And we're lucky with some of them if they go 2 weeks. Turnover is so bad. So the input that we got back from center staff was to not have them so much in central office with us for 2 weeks, but to alternate. A day with us, a day in the center, a day with us, a day in the center, so that they're getting acclimated a little bit easier of the real life in the classroom. And when they come back with us, they actually have some experience and some questions and concerns are happening with us a little bit earlier so that we can start working with them, to help them work through these concerns. And we're asking our veteran staff, which we are losing veteran staff too. So the veteran staff that we have remaining, we're asking them to volunteer. We haven't said, we're going to put this on you. We're asking them to step up and volunteer a little bit more with mentoring them, and kind of like a big sister, big brother program. So we're asking them, kind of take them under your wing, give them that little extra support every day. If we're not there to do it, we're asking our center teams to do it. And, you would take it for granted that that's happening anyways, but everybody is so overwhelmed with their own responsibilities, with their own jobs, with their own children, that we just take it for granted that was happening. And it's not, because when you talk to the people that are leaving and you ask them, and it's like, well, we don't feel like we had any support in the classroom. This child was smacking me every day and nobody was telling me how to work with this child. Nobody was telling me, well, this is what we do, shadowing him. They weren't getting that one-on-one with the classroom, because we can't be there with them to hold their hands all the time with the new staff. So baby steps, we've narrowed it down to even tinier little baby steps of getting them bleeding into the classroom a little bit slower. But that's something that we're doing with onboarding. I thought I'd share that with. I think we're just now starting it. So we're going to see, if there's any improvements, and we can report that back to you guys, later on how that went with us.
I love that.
Our program, with the Head Start, we've also been struggling with that, trying to figure out how to support one another as peers. So as education manager, I started last month, and we've got one scheduled coming this next week, just a teacher networking meeting. We do it through Google Meets. I start the meeting with just a 10 or 15 minute introduction, some things that I've seen on their monthly reports or concerns that's been addressed to me. I don't have an agenda or nothing. I just kind of get them open up and get them talking to one another, kind of like we are right now. And I encourage the teachers to bounce ideas off of each other. We've got a great array of teachers. We got young ones that's only been here for a month, and we've got some that's been here for 30 years. So we want them to bounce ideas off of each other. And, everybody has something to give. Even the young ones, they've got so much knowledge in technology and things like that, where your older teachers have so much knowledge in behaviors and coming up with little ideas to catch the kids' attention and things like that. So that's been a great networking activity for us. We've also been working on with our new mental health consultant. She is helping us work on ideas for staff morale for outside. She's just gotten hired, and she's already gotten plans to do activities outside the workday, trying to make it build relationships where it's not just coming to work and it's so mundane that they're just coming in and doing it. And like you said, a robot just walking in, walking out. We want them to build relationships, actually have relationships. Here in central office, we got relationships. We know everybody's kids, husbands, everything. We've built those relationships, and they're out there at site level. So we're going to try to work on building relationships and making relationships with them as well. So that's what we're doing here.
One of the things, Gwen, that we did is we were like you, probably 4 or 5 years ago. Basically, you got started. We hired you at central office. We tossed you to the wolves. It was before we had coaching, right? So you just came in. Wow. And then we gave you all those, hey, by the way, class is coming and Eckers is coming. And by the way, we're doing licensing as well. And you got to follow this rule and that rule. And we realized, hey, that was wrong. And we started hearing some really good stuff out of Region 4 saying, hey, you got to onboard folks. You got to give them some upfront. And we took and started modifying that. And initially we had onboarding where we explored every component of every department in the whole agency. And we realized, hey, that's too much. They don't really care about any other department besides Head Start. And then we whittled it down and we went into a week-long frame. So they were getting ECHRS, class, curriculum with fidelity, the Eclic beginning teacher series, all in that first week. So basically the full week, just train. And now in hindsight, we're going a lot like what you're saying. We wanted to just give them a little nugget, a little touch of it. And so we did that, but we also found what you said. Then week 2, we put them in a classroom and they last 3 days and then they're gone. So we're working on modifying hours and spreading it out, and actually spreading it out maybe over a 30-day window. My only worry is that they will get so busy and so caught up in everything else, checkpoints and all that stuff, that the onboarding components start to dwindle off, because I don't want to lose that either. And then one of the things that I hear you all saying, and we're saying it too, is it's a behavioral situation. A lot of times my teachers are saying, I can't teach because, and then trying to figure out, and we just had a recent meeting, and I just asked the teachers, what do you need from me? And the reality is they just need me to take it away. And I'm like, we're not going to take it away. We're not going to lose those kiddos. We're going to keep those kiddos, because if not us, who? But they want to know how to get through the day, what modifications. And I think there's a confusion place. We understand we don't expel and we don't suspend children, but there are modifications. And I think there's a lag in what performance standards say and what we can do. You know what I mean? It's like they say we can't do these things, but there's not any guidance as far as what we can do within. And so the teaching staff are down here saying, little Johnny is standing on the shelf throwing blocks at me, and little Johnny over there is bit 6 kids, and this one over here is running out the door, and you're giving me $12 an hour when Starbucks gives me 15. And so that's where my struggle is at. I'm looking at my teacher saying, don't leave me yet. Promise there's answers coming. But I don't know, from our disability mental health side, there are real clear-cut answers coming. We've taught conscious discipline. We understand watching for the fuse, but when you got 6 fuses going, somebody's going to get to blow. And then when they blow.
Sorry, and that's the thing with conscious discipline is conscious discipline will not work for every situation. And I don't want to step in too much into the mental health committee section, but both committees kind of correlate with one another. So, and that's the thing. And I don't know and John, you were talking about like having speakers come in and things like that. Like, I don't know if it would be a good thing to have maybe one of the TA specialists come in and to perhaps kind of reiterate that part of the performance standards to kind of see, because, and I know even some of our staff, and I'm sure in other programs as well, kind of that part of the performance standards about you can't suspend or expel, but what modifications you can do in regards to that. Like, you can do a modified schedule, but it does have to come from like a licensed mental health professional and things like that. So just having like somebody from the Region 4 like a TA specialist come and kind of talk in regards to that. But then I'm like, well, I don't want to step on the mental health side, like educate the mental health committees, but then it kind of correlates with the education side because has to deal with the classroom aspect and the teachers and things like that. So I think it's kind of both sides in regards to that, because that is a big thing. And that's a big reason why a lot of teachers are leaving, is because of the severe behaviors and things like that. And I was looking at one of the comments about hire a mental health specialist that's available to staff members. One of the things that we have done with the extra COVID dollars that the Office of Head Start gave this year, and if you're a licensed childcare facility with the state of Kentucky, the DRCC gave with the American Rescue Plans funds. So what we did with some of that money is we partnered with a mental health therapist. So what he's done for us is we created a contract with him, and he has kind of guaranteed he has 5 available appointments a week that he does virtually, and he sets those appointments aside, and he has a website that staff can log on. We don't know what staff uses those or anything like that, like they're registered a number, and they can log on to the website, click like Head Start appointment, and they can see him for like an hour a session and things like that. And our Head Start pays for those visits. So because I felt like the past couple of years that like we've basically been kind of like therapists ourselves, because there's been so many like issues and things like that that our frontline staff has dealt with. So we've been kind of like therapists, life coaches, mentors to our staff, that it's like been exhausting. So we were like, well, what's one thing that we can do? And that's one of the things we've done with the extra funds that we've graciously got. So that's one thing that you could do if you find a therapist that's wanting to do that. And like I said, he does not give us any names or anything like that. He just gives us like the numbers, because each person is given like a number. And then he just invoices us each month, and that's how we pay him. And then another thing, I know a lot of people were talking about trainings. Some of the required trainings that we're required to do with Head Start, like policies and procedures and things like that. So one thing I started to do this year is I started to record those through Zoom. So some of the ones that aren't required through TRIS and things like that, I've actually recorded those. So whenever we do get new staff and things like that, I just send them the recordings. So like on Fridays when we don't have children or after the kids leave, I save them on, well, with our agency, it's called the Xfer, where all of our files are saved, and they just log onto those and click on the different recordings. And even like how to make a lesson plan, I did a step-by-step video in regards to how to do that. So if they have any questions or anything, because just the simplest thing that like how to log on to take the reliability test of how to do the ongoing assessment, I've made a video for that. So even for a new staff person, how to log into your email, I've made a video for that as well. So, and I've made a folder on our computer where all of those little simple videos are. So, because last year I was getting so many emails about, can you help me with this? And can you help me with that? And so then I would have like, it's so crazy busy trying to deal with this and that and everything else. And that saved me so much time this year. So I would suggest doing that. I mean, it will take time making the videos, but it'll save you so much time to be like, well, if you just go on to this folder, there's all of this stuff for you. But then there's some trainings by all means that you'll do in person if you ever get a chance to go back to in person again, or if you do trainings virtually through this platform. But that's one suggestion that I would suggest, is just creating videos through Zoom. I prefer making the videos through Zoom rather than Teams, because Teams is just, anybody can see the Teams videos, and I don't like it that way, but on Zoom, only you can see them and if you send them out. So that's a suggestion to kind of help you save time with trainings and things like that. Like the less, all trainings are important, but like the less potent trainings.
James, I met with my director yesterday, and that was the suggestion she had made for me, because I was really struggling. You know, I felt like I was failing my staff because they was like, I can't get enough PD. I don't know how to do that. And, you know, I got to thinking, and I know this may sound crazy, but I was talking to my IT person. He was like, how did you know how to do it? And I said, well, somebody showed me. Well, you just handed them an iPad and said, do it. And I was like, well, okay, yeah, I did that. So I'm like you, I'm going to start recording on the Zoom and putting it up on our Paycom so they have it accessible there. They can open it up and watch it. I didn't even think of that until yesterday when she made that suggestion, because I've been drowning myself, you know, with my own self confidence and stuff. Because I was like, boys, I'm failing my staff. I mean, it's coming all the way up to management level now. We're starting to stress now too.
We
see it
sure
on our
are.
faces.
Sure
So,
are.
yeah. So I was at that
But then
point. I
there's-
was like, what do I do now? I can't get my staff trained, but that was a suggestion she made me, and I'm really excited to start doing that. So I may reach out to you on that, James.
Of course. But then there's some big trainings, like, of course, like the class overview and like Eckers and things like that. There's some things that I would want to do, like, not in person, but like schedule it at a time on Zoom or something like that. But just like the little ones, like how to, do TSG reliability, like how to access it, or how to do just simple things like that. You can easily do simple videos like that.
One of those things like you're talking about, James, so like the Eckers and a class overview, I submitted those to Tris as web-based type training. So we actually recorded those modules. They're about an hour and a half long, and there's an accompanying set of questions. So that when staff are watching through that module, there are certain things that I'm wanting to make sure that they're catching, and then I'm able to front load some training hours. So a lot of times for our staff, between that and the beginning teacher series, I got that approved through Tris as well, which was exciting. They come out with like 16 hours of PD training after the first week. But again, then I toss you in the classroom, and my coaches can get to you when they can. And I think that's another thing is getting enough coaching staff. I mean, this week coaches have been subs. They've been clever in classrooms. And so
exactly right.
and you have to encourage them. Our family service workers the same way. A lot of them used to be teachers. Hey, you went back to the classroom, and I give them this kind of pep talk of, hey, even when you're in the classroom as a sub, you can still model, show them good practice. But that's in their minds. But I've been pulled out of the classroom. I have a different job and a different role. So there's a little animosity when you know, like you all, when I'm putting on a hairnet, I'm a little frustrated. Man, I got to put on a hairnet. It's been a long time since I cooked in the morning and ran carts and took out trash. Because you think, man, we worked through to do a different type job. So I'd love to see maybe Mr. James as well, just maybe a listing of those shorter ones that you're talking about, because I never thought about how to do a lesson plan one. I mean, we've got TSG, like you said, and usually I shoot them out emails with specific directions, but I never thought about a quick video. So maybe even just like and I don't know if that's something we can do here, a running tab of here's some things that you can module out.
Yeah, we have actually partnered with a local community college, and they house, this was pre-COVID even, and they house a private website for us and kind of oversee it. And we have several trainings on there like that, and it's really nice. And you can't do everything that way, but like you said, we turn it into Tris and get credit for it, and they have to answer the questions, and it's been very beneficial.
And that's been one of the main goals that I was hoping for this group, is to like network and reach out to different like ed managers and different members of the education teams from across the state. Because I know that like with our Head Start grantee, when we went through Focus 1, Focus 2, we were supposed to go through class. So I'm not hurt this year that they put that on hold. So, but we were like, well, goodness, like who in the state has gone through those when we went through those? So like, that's what I was hoping, like, so when like different grantees go through those, to kind of reach out to the different ed managers, like, so, hey, like, how was your experience with that? Like, what did they ask for? Like, how intense was it? So that's hopefully like to the point where we can get to like, so, and especially like if there's any new ed managers or new coaches or something like that, that people can bounce back and forth, because I mean, it sounds like all of us has been in Head Start for 10 plus years, some 20 plus years, for a while. So there might be some that'll get into a leadership role that might be like, what in the heck? I don't know what I'm doing. So, So, yeah, so.
One thing we are missing is we have that onboarding for teachers and TAs, classroom assistants, but we don't really have a strong onboarding for center management. And we lost 6 center managers last year. So we have 6 brand new center site directors. That's a big role. And that is a role that I totally skipped. So I can give a lot of assistance, but not totally. And that's one of the things that we're missing. And just so you know, FA2 22 class is canceled. They're not doing them this year. I was in a meeting, they told that the other day. So.
One thing, if we're thinking about goals and objectives for this particular group, you're zeroing in on these training and onboarding and sharing of videos and creating videos. There's no reason why KHSA couldn't be the online repository for those things. You know what I mean? So we could create an entire section where they may not be applicable for everyone. So for instance, James may have created a module that's applicable to a particular way they do it in his program. But, 80% of what's in the video is going to be applicable, to other folks. So it may be that we can begin to take some of those, put them in that online repository and begin to categorize them and catalog them in there. And then people can, come and use them as they need to. We had talked about creating some onboarding sorts of things, but so much of that has been created now. What we really need to do is to find the best that has been created within Kentucky or even outside Kentucky that could be useful, but something that we could then post and make available for free, without any sort of licensing issues or anything like that.
What is and Mr. John, you would know the Head Start group that's right in Hendersonville, into Evansville area, into Indiana. That group actually came down and visited us a few years ago after a mega conference, and they have a repository of modules created. Okay. And that's what spurred my thought and us doing some of the, so they may have some things really platformed out that if we can get.
Okay, so you say they're in Evansville, sort of
Evansville.
In that area? Okay.
Yes. Yeah, I wasn't sure what their group is.
I'll jump on and see what I can do. And I know my colleague in Indiana who runs the association, so he may be familiar with that as well, and I can work with him and see what we can find.
That would be cool. We have, I've got, Ecker's class overview, curriculum of fidelity with creative curriculum, a multicultural and a conscious discipline, just an overview, very brief. It's not agency specific. Be glad to share if anyone needs those.
And I was going to say, so not everybody might not use the creative curriculum. Like I know some people are blended programs. So if you're part of the school district, some people might use a different curriculum. Some people might not use teaching strategies as their ongoing assessment. Some people might use something else. But I mean, heck, we might have a whole library of different things that you can choose from just as resources. And you can even use those as samples or something. So, I mean, it doesn't hurt to have a whole resource at your fingertips. If you want to use them, they'll be there. If you don't want to use them, you don't have to.
Right.
This excites me. I'm just going to say, I love the idea of having modules from all of you guys and using those in addition to what we do. Maybe even replacing some of what we do, maybe even better than what we do. So I love this talk.
Goal, very achievable goal for us. Donna.
I was just going to say that our organization is lucky enough to fall under an educational cooperative. And so the other departments at our cooperative work with the school districts. And we as an agency have created a shared form that lists every department, what virtual trainings that they offer, and then the person who created it and a link. And so that is shared out. All of the Head Start trainings I have put in there, the ones that we have like on Google Classroom or Zoom trainings. And so district personnel can access those, and then I can then see what is available for them. And so that might be a good thing for us to, as a goal or a project or something, come up with how to organize, how can we share with each other what's already out there. And John kind of said that with KHSA. So it's been working really well. So I like the direction that this is going. Yeah,
I may be in touch and see, you mentioned a form, but is like a literal form, you know, that the folks fill out and then they've got it?
It's a literal like chart in a Google, like a shared Google document.
Right.
And then it just has like trainer or like
I
who
got
we
you.
would
I
report
got you.
to.
Yep.
That's
Yep.
a link to the virtual training.
The only tricky part for me has been when that onboarding all comes back, all those questions are answered, and I can see that they've watched that module, is inputting it all into TRIS, because it can get really bogged down. So that might be something is if we can kind of figure out a way to get that, you know, a centralized person that's uploading those onboardings, even at a state level. I don't know. That may be, I may be asking too much now. Mr. John, you know, we have a brand new director in our program that you've met. One of the things that we're looking at is based on staffing and enrollment, is having to do some modifications. Some of those hybrid type Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday versus our 4 full days. Do you have any thoughts as far as how open-minded our folks are going to be at the grant level with making some of those modifications so that we can keep the classrooms open? You know what I mean? It's kind of like we've got to do this or we
Right.
can't be open.
Right. No, I don't have any idea as to how they're going to react to it, because the conversations that I have been on with them, and I'm not sure, Jeff, if that came up in some of your conversations as well, but on the issues of flexibility, about how much flexibility has existed and how much currently exists, but that flexibility is increasingly going away. And unless they sort of re-up that flexibility and reinforce it in writing to everyone, yeah, we can certainly ask and see, but no, I don't have any insight into that for you, unfortunately.
The only thing that I know is I've been asking that question for quite a while, several months. My specialist indicated, yes, it was a possibility, send stuff in and we'll prove it or not. But I do know that Tommy Sheridan spoke to that also a couple of weeks ago, and that they are really pushing the office to start to put something in writing. Even to the point, and I guess I agree with it, just because we've got to keep things open. But even if you, to the point is all you got to do to become qualified is to start an IECE program. I mean, that's putting some really untrained people potentially in the leads, but you know, we're in that desperate of a situation. So there again, nothing concrete, just that NHSA is really pushing for a lot more flexibility and asking OHS to come out and make those statements. Because even in trying to voice this to specialists, they're like, well, you know, it's case by case, we really can't, you know, and I get that. It almost has to be. But NHSA is pushing for more of a blanket flexibility in that. Now, where that'll go, we'll just have to wait and see. But as I said, everybody does know the staffing shortages. It's not just your program, it's not just this state. It is across the entire nation. And it's also in the school systems. The school systems, which they do have a little different flexibility. I don't even know if it's less, it's different. But everybody's struggling right now.
Well, that's going to be so, and I don't want this to open up a big old ginormous can of worms, but I'm on a lot of Facebook, like I'm on like the National Head Start page on Facebook and things like that. So the whole vaccine mandate and things like that. And I know, John, you said there hasn't been like any leeway or anything in regards to that. But come January 1st, like all Head Starts are facing like a major staffing shortage. So I know when it came to, and I can't think what it was, there was something, and then they waited till like, basically like right before it happened, and then they, anyways, but I just have a feeling like once it comes closer and then like towards the end of December, or it's gonna be basically even worse when it comes to that. So if like we're in a staffing shortage now, it's gonna be basically, I feel like it's gonna be like where basically centers are either gonna have to shut down, or because there's not going to be enough leadership basically to go into classrooms. And hopefully there's going to be calls soon once it gets closer to like December or something like that. Like that's my biggest fear right now, because we already have staff saying, well, should I put in my 2 weeks now? Or, and I'm like, well, just hold out, like, don't get all excited right now. Like, hopefully, there'll be some more guidance coming out, but the way it's sounding is nothing's budging or hoping. Like my fingers crossed is that like the federal government will realize the crisis that the Head Starts are facing, and that will, my fingers are crossed, is that they'll give some flexibility and be like, well, either get vaccinated or get weekly tested. That's what I'm hoping, which, I mean, I know I'm hoping for gold right now, but that's what I'm seeing is what's going to happen, is that literally Head Starts are either going to have to like close centers, close classrooms, and that's going to be a major problem for families. I don't know if I'm the only one that's going to be feeling that.
Yeah.
And I would take right now the weekly testing for the ones that don't want to get vaccinated. But what scares me is I don't think it's going to come, because I think it's political. I don't think this is an option for the office Head Start. They've been told everybody gets vaccinated, and it's political, so I don't see it backing down. So yeah, I'm with you, James. I would love to see it, because they know it's not just you. I've already had one person quit because of it. And I'm like,
oh, we've had some quit too.
And I'm like, it hadn't come down yet, you know?
Right.
Well, for us, I mean, we had to set up a standard and said, hey, you know, we need a decision by end of November. Because we were in our minds going, we cannot wait January 4th, and surprise, 75% of our staff don't show back up. And we've already had like a mass exodus a little bit. And then there were folks that said, I'm not responding to your request to say if I will or I won't, which really means I probably won't. So we've really had to start doing that. And that's where I really am optimistic that program setups and dynamics and full enrollment all becomes very open-minded. Because I'm like you all, I don't think they're going to roll back that decision on the mandate. I'm pretty convinced that it's a federal decision. But if they can give us some flexibility on how we run our programs, hybrids, virtuals, I mean, best practice is 2 staff in every classroom, but awareness that we may have to fall strictly under licensing regs, and it may be 1 in 12 to stay open. That's the flexibility I'm needing to hear back from the big deal.
And I don't think we'll be able to keep every classroom open. I mean,
right.
We have to cancel from time to time just because we get enough staff or kids quarantined. But you know, I talked to all my managers yesterday, and their frustrations is staffing. I mean, yeah, there's burnout, but the burnout's coming because they're trying to cover everything. The only thing that I could really give them, because I felt helpless because I don't have the answer to it, or I'd be telling everybody if I knew some magical thing. But you know, I said, keep reminding them, and you know, we're going to lose staff. I don't care, whatever. But John alluded to the very beginning of this. There is something out there about $2.5 billion to Head Start salaries. Well, you go figure that up. That's about 24% of the total Head Start budget at the moment. That would be massive. And their whole goal is to get us on equal footing with the school system, so that maybe we lose some of the staff. Might make it a little more difficult for people to quit their jobs if they knew that was coming. Minimum of $15 an hour, if, you know, no matter what your job is. And then, you court, whatever level you're at, correspond to the school system. Hey, is it coming down? I'm like, John, I don't know. It's all in the hands of Congress and all that, but
Right.
I can figure numbers out to what $2.5 billion that, what you get 23% of the Head Start budget and go backwards from there. It makes a major difference. The problem is you can't promise that because until they pass some, and who knows, they may not pass anything. So.
And along those
But
lines, I have put in our Google Drive a copy of the recent survey that we did. Survey that was conducted last week, and I think the analysis went out earlier this week to all the directors. But it really is around vaccines and what programs are doing about vaccines. Are you offering incentives? Are you offering hazard pay? What are you doing for additional sick days if someone has burned through all their time already? So some questions like that. So if you'll go through and look at that survey, you'll see some of those answers from your colleagues in there. The other thing I would say is that we had attempted to do a compensation and benefits survey about 18 months ago, and we got just under half of all the programs in Kentucky to send us their info, which wasn't quite enough for us to get it done. I've actually started a new conversation with a new HR consultant, and I have a call with him this afternoon to sort of talk about how can we simplify that process yet still get all the information that we need. So that information and that project will hopefully be coming, and that'll be something that's overarching across all these sections, because the recruitment and retention and pay continues to be, a major issue. So hopefully we will begin to have a handle on that, where you would be able to have real data that you can look at, not just for the state, but possibly for your areas. And so you can use that for some justification going forward. Okay, folks, it is almost 11:15. And so we've been on here for just over an hour sort of talking. Happy to stay longer, but at the same time, I want to make sure that we're being respectful of everybody's time, especially on a Friday. So are there other topics we want to raise? I've got 4 pages of notes here. And what I'm going to do is summarize all of that and try and break them down into some different objectives and see if those are some things that we can agree on. So be looking for that email from me next week, and we can then make some decisions. If we want to make some changes to that, we can. Again, it's very organic. We don't have to stick to everything. We can always change and flow as we go. The other thing I would say is meetings. If this group wants to meet more often, we can. So I'll throw out some options for us to schedule our next meeting as well. So any other thoughts or comments? I hate to cut us off, but at the same time, I want to be respectful of everyone's time.
I really enjoyed the networking.
Excellent. Yeah, and we may find that in the future, our meetings need to be scheduled for longer, just so we can have sort of that networking opportunity in there. We may just have a set agenda where we go through and, just have time reserved for that, where we just sort of talk about ideas and try to help each other solve problems. So, okay, James, Donna, any closing thoughts or comments?
I just want to thank everybody I don't want to say this in a bad way, but I'm glad that it's not our only, at first I'm like, damn, I thought it was our only program that's going through such of a bad trouble. So I'm glad our program's not the only one, but I don't mean that in a bad way. So don't take that in a bad way. So I'm glad, whew, at first I'm like, what the heck are we doing wrong? But
there's misery in the masses.
Misery in the masses.
That's a relief. So I'm glad it's everywhere and not just in one spot.
Yeah.
James, it's all through Region 4, and I suspect it's through all regions.
Oh yeah, for sure. All right, gang. Well, I appreciate your time and all of your insights, and be looking for that information from me next week. Otherwise, I hope everybody has a great weekend.
Thank you.
See everybody.
Hey, John.
Yeah, Jeff.
Hey, I haven't forgot you on sending those documents to you. I've just been out, and yesterday was a catch
No
up.
problem.
I'll get them to you in a little bit. They didn't have as many as I thought they had. There's I think half of them sending it in, but I'll send you what I've got. And I'll send the
no worries.
directors.
And hopefully that thing I sent you this morning, hopefully that'll work.
Yeah, I think it will. Probably we picked one out there that I did, but by having the restoration on it. And I know I attended that one because I remember that one.
Right.
When you sent the other one, I thought, boy, my memory's really getting bad because I couldn't remember it.
Especially if you've got the registration. And I was
Yeah.
sure to put the link in there for you because that will take you to all the meeting materials that they had as well.
Okay, great. And I forward that link onto my person and she's going to
Okay.
forward that on to licensing. And it's just, I'm like a quarter or a half hour short interest. I got 30 hours outside interest, but they won't take that. So
We'll
anyway,
get you set up.
I appreciate all your effort. I'll send you the executive director's report too. And then, of course, I won't send you yours because you got that, but I'll send you the other, I think 3 or so that I've got. But
Okay, that'd be
one
good.
shows
Yeah,
you
I'd love to see them.
All right.
All right, thanks, Jeff. See you
All right.
later.
See ya.
Bye.